Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Mi Gente On Air, WSGW's live stream of the show. I'm so excited tonight because we've got a very special guest, and I'm really excited to be partnering with the Marshall M. Fredericks Sculpture Museum with the NEA Big Read Initiative. And I got to tell you, this is a great collaborative here in Saginaw in the Great Lakes Bay region. They're doing some wonderful things out there at SVSU at the Marshall M. Frederick Museum. And I want to encourage everybody to come on into the room, feel like they're a part of this show today, because I really want to encourage any feedback, any questions that you may have for my guest tonight. She's a prolific author that has done some great work through the years. And we are really lucky and blessed tonight to have Sandra Cisneros with us. And I want to thank everybody over at the Sculpture Museum for making this possible, as well as WSGW for making this Mi Gente On Air show available to the public, as well as allowing me to have that voice in our community. So come on into the room. We're going to go on break for about a minute and a half, and then we're going to go right into the show. And I'm so excited. I'm nervous. I'm excited. And I'm just feeling really good. So come on into the show and please be a part of Mi Gente On Air tonight. We'll be back in a moment.
Welcome to Mi Gente On Air on 100.5 and 790 News Radio WSGW and online WSGW.com. Now, here is your host, Larry Rodarte.
Good evening. Buenos noches. Welcome to another edition of Mi Gente On Air. I am your host, Larry Rodarte, and we have a great show tonight. I am partnering with the Marshall M. Frederick Museum, and I'm honored to be a part of their great initiative, the Big Read program. What a great collaborative we have here in Saginaw. It is a wonderful museum. You have to go see it if you're not familiar with it or you haven't seen it. It's called the Marshall M. Frederick Museum. And I want to introduce Megan, who is going to tell you a little bit about the initiative that they've got going on and why I'm a part of this tonight with Mi Gente On Air. Hi, Megan.
Hello. Thank you, Larry. So great to be here on Mi Gente On Air and with you and with all of your viewers and our viewers on the Marshall and Fredericks Facebook page and YouTube. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Come on up so they can see you. I see you're very tiny in your
Sorry,
screen.
I'm trying to get rid of this glare on my glasses, but we'll do our best here. Yeah, if I can have a second, I'd love to share briefly with our audience about the Marshall M. Fredericks Sculpture Museum. It is on the campus of Saginaw Valley State University in mid-Michigan. And our permanent gallery and sculpture garden feature over 200 sculptures by one artist, America's public sculptor, Marshall M. Fredericks. And some of you may know his work, which includes The Spirit of Detroit in downtown Detroit, Christ on the Cross in Indian River, Michigan, Fountain of Eternal Life in Cleveland, Ohio, the Expanding Universe Fountain in Washington, D.C., and the Leaping Gazelle on Belle Isle in Detroit. So he is all over the place across the U.S. and the world. Our museum also hosts special temporary exhibitions and partners on community projects, including the recently launched publicartpassport.com, which is a web portal to public art around the Great Lakes Bay region. So check that out. Another community project we are thrilled to lead is part of tonight's program, the NEA Big Read Great Lakes Bay region. The National Endowment for the Arts, NEA Big Read, is designed to broaden our understanding of the world, our communities, ourselves, through the joy of sharing a book. So basically, like the Big Read is like a supersized book club with programs and discussions and events held over 10 months. And for us, over 3 counties, Bay, Midland, and Saginaw counties of Michigan. Our goals include bringing those neighboring communities together to celebrate storytelling, art, and culture. So, for this initiative, the museum has partnered with libraries and arts organizations, including, and bear with me because we've got a lot of fabulous partners, Studio 23 in Bay City, Creative 360 in Midland, the Saginaw Art Museum, the Grace A. Dow Memorial Library in Midland, the Public Libraries of Saginaw, the Bay County Library System, Delta College Public Media, and of course, Saginaw Valley State University. So yay to all of our partners. Narrowing in a bit, the book that we selected was The One, the Only House on Mango Street by our guest tonight, Sandra Cisneros. And its stories and themes provide countless inspiration for reflection, discussion, as well as these programs and events. We even hear the book may have inspired an opera. So maybe Sandra can tell us a little bit about that later. But I just want to briefly share just 2 of the many programs that we are hosting. And we're highlighting themes from the book around neighbors and neighborhoods. So the first program is called Mi Casa Su Casa, sharing stories about neighbors and the places we call home. It is a community storytelling project whereby community members share their personal stories. Then we post them online, which makes them available for sharing to even broader audiences, family members, generations. So that's just great. And then I'm also excited to share a project that just launched today, and it is our public art project with the NEA Big Read, where we're going to select 3 artists, 1 from each county, to work with community members to build a public artwork that will stay in their community. And by working with the community, we are ensuring that that artwork is representative of, co-created by, and available and accessible to all in the community. So look forward to that in our upcoming warmer spring months in Michigan. So for details on that, any of these other programs, the museum, just visit our webpage, marshallfredericks.org. Click on the Big Read button. We've got a whole Big Read portal with all this exciting news that we have going on. So just last thing before I hand it back over to our host, I must give thanks to all of our important sponsors. So funding for the NEA Big Read Great Lakes Bay region comes from, of course, the National Endowment for the Arts program that's in partnership with Arts Midwest, the Hemlock Semiconductor Community and Regional Empowerment Fund, the Bay Area Community Foundation, the Saginaw Community Foundation, the Midland Area Community Foundation. All of these community partners just show how important this book and initiative is to everyone in our community. So we're just really excited about that. Last but not least, tonight's program was made possible with support from the SVSU Dow Visiting Scholars and Artists Program. So thank you for your patience. And without further ado, the man who needs no introduction, Mr. Larry Rodarte.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan. I keep saying there's such an awareness of Latino culture and heritage stemming from the art community these days. And it's just really wonderful. Thank you so much. And we are so honored tonight to have as our guest the beloved author of House of Mango Street, Sandra Cisneros. When you think of Latino authors, she's right there at the top of the list. She has authored a multitude of novels, poems, and more, and has been an inspiration to many authors around the world. The book, House of Mango, has sold over 6 million copies and has won countless prestigious awards. She is a Midwest girl born in the 1950s. She's one of us. Please help me welcome to Mi Gente On Air, the sensational Sandra Cisneros. Hola, Sandra. Saludos de Michigan.
Hi, can you hear me, Larry?
I can hear you. I can hear you all the way out there in Mexico. Where are you right now?
In Mexico City.
Mexico City, okay? Because I know that nowadays you live in San Miguel de Allende.
I
But
do.
you're in Mexico City currently for a presentation.
A presentation on Sunday. There's a festival here called Festival Internacional de Escritoras Primavera. It's called Primavera Festival, and I'm invited to be part of a women's writers
Well,
gathering.
what a life you are living. You've been this prolific author for so many years now, starting with House of Mango and, leading on to all the work that you have done. How is it for you today, now in 2022? You're still writing, you're still contributing. Did you ever think it was going to be the life that you are leading now when you were back there in Chicago?
Actually, when I was middle school, like 11 years old, I did see my future. You know how sometimes we get a little pinhole that just zooms in the future. Sometimes we get just a glimmer. And I was in the library and I was looking for a book in the old card catalog before computers. And you had to look through index cards, if you remember,
Oh, yeah.
Larry, to pull out those long drawers that were longer than your arm and take it to a table and physically touch each card to look for the title you were searching. And I ran into a card that was very soft from many hands touching it, was smudged, dirty. And I backed up. I wasn't looking for that book, but I backed up and looked at it and I said, this must be a good book. And then I saw my future. I said, I want my name in the library. Cisneros, Sandra, and I couldn't see the title of the book, but I could visualize. And I tell young people who are 11 to use your third eye and visualize what you want and walk towards it every day. That's your camino sagrado. For me, that moment was very important because I saw what I wanted and I didn't tell anyone that's what I wanted because I didn't want them to destroy my dream. But I did see it at that moment. I didn't see it as, of course, the way it's evolved. I had very humble aspirations, but it began there when I started writing at that time, 11.
What a beautiful story. And 11, I think, is a magical number for you because I read somewhere, I heard in an interview where you talked about that you see yourself sometimes at the age of 11 to 13. And sometimes myself, I still see myself as I'm in my early 20s. And, I don't know why we do that. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Why do you see yourself as that young girl at 11 to 13?
I think maybe for you, the truest self is your identity you had when you were 22. And for me, I still feel like I'm still a kid. I still get very excited about things that children would get excited about. So when you go to my house, you think, does a kid live here? Yeah, me. And, I just don't feel that I've ever left that childlike way of looking or enjoying life. So people see me on the outside now. I'm 67, but inside I still feel like I'm 11 years old.
Wow, wow, that reminds me of, The Outsiders, the movie where Ponyboy, he says to stay gold, just to look at things as the way you looked at as the first time experiencing or as a child, so, I mean,
Mhm.
that's a beautiful way to go through life. It was the 1980s when you began House of Mango Street, and you were in your 20s. What inspires a young person, a Latina, a Midwestern girl, to center on writing a book? Because there were very few who did this back then. I mean, this is the 1980s. Tell me a little bit
No,
about
no, actually, correction. I started the book in 1977 when I was in graduate school. I was 22, my second semester, first year in graduate school at the University of Iowa, where I was studying for my MFA. So I was actually in the 70s when I started the book. I finished it in 1982, but it didn't get published till 84. And I have to thank here, and I want to publicly say this, the National Endowment for the Arts, who gave me a grant when I was a young woman in my 27, 28. And that grant that they gave me allowed me to quit my day job and to finish this book. So we're full circle. NEA is one of our sponsors today. I want to thank the National Endowment for the Arts for their assistance. They've helped many artists, but especially this one talking to you tonight.
Yeah, isn't that something? You've come full circle, and there's such a big part of this whole initiative here that we have with the Marshall M. Frederick Museum, and that's just really awesome. How does it make you feel when when you sometimes they may introduce you as that pioneering Chicana author or the first female Mexican American writer to have her work published by a mainstream publisher? How does that make you feel?
Well, again, I have to clarify, I'm not the first one. Cecile Pineda has that honor, San Francisco writer.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, Cecile Pineda, very good writer, actually. But she didn't necessarily write about Chicano stories, but she is a Chicana. So
Mhm.
I have to acknowledge and put a shout out to Cecile, who's a wonderful writer. It was that my work was focused on the Chicano community, so that's why sometimes there's that confusion.
Yeah.
It's been a long trajectory. Something that I envisioned since I was a child. I started writing in secret, and I wrote in high school and in college. I never thought that I would be talking to you tonight. I thought I would just be, English teacher, high school teacher, writing on summer times and weekends if I had time. I didn't expect the kinds of accolades that life has given me. I feel very grateful and honored to be telling the stories that I'm telling.
Well, so many have said that they really relate to the book in House of Mango. And as the author, why do you feel that it resonated with so many people? And how did you feel about it being selected as the big read selection?
Well, first, let me answer your first question, which is, why? I think it's because I wrote it for others. And I think when we do work on behalf of others without any ego involved, with no agenda for ourselves, siempre sale bonito. Whatever we do with love on behalf of those we love, without any idea of something we'll gain ourselves, but more from a place of puro amor, from pure love, it's always going to turn out well. And that's something I learned afterwards. So I think that's why the book has done well. I wrote it for my students and for people I had witnessed whose lives I didn't know how to change, but I wanted to document their story. And we can look in our own lives when we've done things from a spirit of generosity. Everybody has done something in a spirit of generosity with pure love. And when we do anything with puro amor, siempre sale bonito. So that's the answer to the first one. It always turns out well if you do anything with a generous spirit and no agenda for self-gain. And the second question, if I remember now correctly, you're gonna have to remind me what the second question was.
When they told you the selection, the big
Oh,
reading.
NEA. Yeah, I was so happy because, I started out writing this book, finishing it, thanks to National Endowment for the Arts grant. I probably would still be writing it if it hadn't been that that grant arrived in my 28th year of my life, and I was able to finish something I started in 22 and quit my job, finish it finally. And even though it's slender, it took a lot of time because I wrote it the way I would write poetry, and I'm very proud of it even now. As I revisit it and rework it with I'm working with a composer now on House on Mango Street, the opera, and
Wow.
it holds up. It's a good writing. It's strong writing, and I'm very pleased with it even now. After all, it's not my favorite book of all my books. I'm always have my favorites, but it's my oldest child, and I'm pleased and very, very happy that my oldest child is still out there going to work every day, getting the readers. And I thank the NEA for bringing the book to your community, to Saginaw. To so many people are reading it in Spanish and English, and I think books have their tienen que cumplir. They have to fulfill their mission. The mission of this book was to help other young women and young men who and were in positions where they felt powerless. I felt powerless as their teacher, and I wanted to empower people to make change. And I think that book is doing that, especially now.
Yes, yes, it is. And I loved how you write in straw into gold. That was just it, the metamorphosis of every day, how you didn't know how to make tortillas. And I have to say this because I do make tortillas every week. I work with a nonprofit, and we make what we call patitos here, and we roll them out by hand, and then we deep fry them and make them into tacos. But, in that straw into gold, you wrote that you felt like a woman in a fairy tale locked up in a room. Let's talk about this because I thought it was so beautiful how you express, what you were feeling at that time when you were with those friends and they invited you to the Mexican dinner.
Well, I was living in the south of France at that time. I'd finished House on Mango Street. I still had money left, so I was traveling, and I met some Latinos from South America, and one was an academic. I think they were both academics, and we crossed paths somehow, and they invited me to dinner, but they didn't tell me I was making the tortillas, and they just assumed because I was Mexican that I must know how to make tortillas, and they threw some ingredients at me, and I thought, "Ay, órale, now what I'm gonna do? I don't know how to make tortillas, and they're making a meal and they're asking me to make the tortillas." So I just kind of remembered how my mother made them, and I had some. They gave me some mix that they had bought, and I don't know where they got it, but they wanted me to make corn tortillas. I don't know how to make corn tortillas. My mother never made corn, she made flour. So
Yeah.
here I was with corn mix thinking, "Oh, I'm just gonna have to fake it." They were the most horrible tortillas I've ever seen. They were as thick as the soles of a huarache, but they didn't know any better, and they liked it, and I just thought, "Good." So then I
Wow.
thought that's what writing is like for me. I always get thrown into these situations where I have to make something, and I always think I can't do it. Ay, no me va a salir. I get a little terrified. Fear always blocks us, and somehow, you just have to fake it. And every book I've gone through that period of desolation and despair. I think I can't finish the book. I think, oh no, ya no puedo, but le echo ganas, and somehow, we get through. We have that tenacidad of our
Yes.
in DNA, and so I use that story. It's in my book, A House of My Own, which are stories from my life. If people want to read my real life as opposed to the invented characters in my book, you can look at that book where that essay
Yes,
appears.
yes, and I'm so glad you shared that because I'm a writer as well. I've been writing a book for probably the last 10 years about my great grandmother's life, and I've entitled it called the flight of the monarch butterflies that come from Mexico, and they came up
Mhm.
to Michigan. And I do get those blocks, and I do get that fear. And you've inspired me just to continue on, to get, like you say, get through it. We got to
You
get
know
through.
what? I get more scared with every book. It doesn't get easier. So I like to tell other writers that fear is part of the process, but it's not the destination. Just remember that.
Yes, and I thank you for those words, and for that encouragement. You're in Mexico City today. One of the questions I had was to, tell me, what if you looked out the window in San Miguel de Allende, but now I know you're in Mexico City. What do you see out there today?
Well, I'm actually in the house of a performance artist, Astrid Haddad. She's a wonderful performer. She sings and does history and feminist politics. So she's really out there and wild. And I'm in her studio where she does her work. And so I really can't see out the window except for the top because I'm on the first floor of two stories. I can see the lights in a high rise across the street. I'm in Colonia Roma Norte, and I'm in an old building with high vigas, I could stand on myself two more times and not reach the ceiling, that kind of a building. And it's just full of art and toys and photographs. And, when you're in another artist space like this
Mhm.
one, it makes you want to make art. It makes
Yes,
you want to go home and repaint your walls. It makes
yes.
you redecorate.
Yes, it inspires you. Well, we're gonna come back from commercial here. We're gonna talk more with the great Sandra Cisneros. I can't believe how fast this first segment went. I have so many things I want to ask, so many questions, and yet we are already done with the first segment of the program. So we'll be back here on Mi Gente on Air with the great Sandra Cisneros. No te vayas.
This is Mi Gente on Air on WSGW.
Okay, so we are talking with Sandra Cisneros here on the live stream. I want to continue to invite people in. We have comments from Roxanne Chantaka. She is a teacher at Arthur Hill High School, and she's so involved with so many young people. And she says, thank you for this. So thank you, Roxanne Chantaka. If you've got a question for Sandra Cisneros, feel free to ask, and we can maybe ask her at the end of the program as well. Catherine Martinez says, welcome. And she's saying, bienvenidos to Sandra Cisneros. And I want to encourage anybody who has a question. We are so fortunate to have this author here with us because, I mean, she really, when you think about Latinos in our country, you think of Dolores Huerta, and you think of Cesar Chavez, and you think of Selena and Sandra Cisneros. I mean, these are the great, what I would consider legends, icons, if you will, because she has really been somebody, as a journalist, as an author myself. She is one of those giants that I am standing on the shoulders of because she has done some great things. And, it's amazing to me that we have this opportunity tonight. So if anybody is out there and wants to ask a question, this is your moment. This is your chance. So thank you for being with us here on WSGW's live stream of Mi Gente on Air. And it will be aired on Sunday at 8 p.m. on 100.5 FM and 790 AM, and then it will go into the podcast realm. So thank you again, WSGW, and we're going to be back with Sandra Cisneros in just a few moments here as we have a commercial break. Okay.
You're listening to Mi Gente On Air on WSGW.
Welcome back, mi gente. Thank you for being with us tonight. We have such a great guest here tonight. The Sandra Cisneros, the author who is the author of so much great work. She's known for The House of Mango Street, which is the big read, the NEA selection, and it is making a great impact in the Great Lakes Bay region here with the Marshall M. Fredericks Museum and Sculpture Museum. And we have this opportunity to talk with her. And I just want to mention to Miss Cisneros, Sandra, I was really taken by your interview and your short story about museums and your parents and attending on Sundays. And you've written about, planting the seeds, and you were there at so many museums, from the Frida exhibit, Evita, Edith Piaf. But I want to tell you, was really touched by the saying where you said, I am me thanks to her. And you were referring to your mother. And you evoke so much in that statement at the end of your story about museums, because you literally had me in tears, because it described exactly how my mother molded me with her love of pop culture and books and everything else. So can you just tell us a little bit about that and your experience with your mother in museums, your
Yeah,
parents?
I know a museum is sponsoring this today, and I hope everyone listening out there will take advantage of going to visit museums and bring your children and your family, because sometimes we don't realize that we're planting seeds when we take children on to museums, to concerts, to see art. My mother had 7 children, and there weren't a lot of places that she could take us that she could afford to go to on Sundays. On Saturdays, we went to the library. And on Sundays, she asked my father to drive us to the downtown Grant Park in Chicago to listen to concerts, or to visit one of the many museums that Chicago has. And we were very fortunate that my father was a wonderful father. He was tired, but he drove us nonetheless. Every weekend we went to some museum, and at that time all the museums were free, so it was something within reach for my mother and father to take their 7 children, and they could go in and not have to pay admission on Sundays. And we went to the Chicago Art Institute, the Field Museum, the Shedd Aquarium. We went to the zoos, Lincoln and Brooklyn, the Chicago Historical Society, the Shedd Aquarium, the planetarium, all of those. If it was free, we were there. So it was a way for my mother to recharge. And it was also, without her knowing it, she was planting the seeds for us in our careers, and things we would love. And all of my brothers, even though not all of them are artists, but all of them love the arts. Several are musicians. One is a geologist. One's a doctor. One did business. One's a guitarist. So she planted the seeds in all of us to enrich ourselves and to expand beyond what the schools could offer us. And there's a mom who didn't finish 9th grade and always regretted it. And thanks to her and to my father's regret that he didn't finish university, both of them didn't finish their education and regretted it. And they were a great combination for encouraging us to educate ourselves beyond the classroom, to go on to study and to, take advantage of what cities have to offer.
Yes. And I was just so touched by that. I had to bring that up because I really, even though I'm a male, I still, really resonated with me, because my mother, she loved to show me the pop cultures from songs. I remember in the 60s listening to Downtown by Petula Clark, and just riding in her blue Buick to that song, and just being so influenced and loving, the music and the radio at that time. And it's really something, because in the 1960s, I'm old enough to remember the late 1960s and have vivid memory of it. And I remember at a time when I kind of didn't want to be remembering that time period. Everything was more in the futuristic or whatever. But now, as I've gotten older, I realized that I was there in the 60s, and it was a memorable time. Now it was very, it's kind of similar with your book, House of Mango, where you were there, you were at that time in your life, and you realize that your the home is where the heart is, and where you are at that time, and I kind of feel the same way. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you feel about
House on Mango Street was not a glorification, though, of our
right,
community. It was
right,
a very critical book that I wrote in response to books where my colleagues, male writers, were writing about El Barrio in a very different way than the way I saw it. The men were writing about it in a whole other perspective, and I felt that they were not being self-critical about the problems that were existing in our community. And I especially felt it as a teacher to young men and women who I
hmm
felt were the victims of violence. And I wanted to document that. Uh, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful of our community. I was really writing from a place of love to try to make each other aware of how we could take power, how we could organize, how we could make change if we changed ourselves. We couldn't. We maybe were waiting too much for someone else to make that change, and we were the ones that had to make that change, because that's what the book's all about. I really
right,
want everybody, regardless of what their nationality is or what neighborhood, or whether they live in China or in Argentina, to realize that everybody has an address, so everyone knows a place that is troubled, and everyone has a responsibility to work towards making that change. You can't wait for the mayor to do it. You got to do it yourself. You got to do it yourself. And that's the message of House on Mango Street. I never wanted it to be read as a simply Latino community, because if you know Chicago,
yeah,
it's mixed. Blocks are mixed, and I grew up with Mexican next to Puerto Rican, next to Ukrainian, next to Polish, next to Black people, all on one block, and next to people from Appalachia. And I wanted to write about that community, and I didn't mention in the book that it was Chicago, because I wanted everybody, whether you lived in Beijing or whether you lived in Oslo or in Buenos Aires, I wanted everyone to say, oh, I know that address. That sounds like my neighborhood. And I wanted everyone to feel that this was an address that they were familiar with, and a community that they were familiar with. So that was my aim.
yeah,
And I know now that people presume that it's a book that things that happened to me, but actually it was a collective of stories. When you think about all the stories that come through you, that people tell you, that you witnessed, that you lived, that your mother told you, yeah, they may all be true. They didn't all happen to you, but you gather them together and shape them, and you make a braid, like, just like I braid my hair from 3 parts. Well, you may take 3 people to make one character, to make the story have more strength. And that's what I did. And so that's why it became a novel. But is the story true? Yes. It didn't all come from my head, but I gathered the strands from many lives.
yes, yes. And I read somewhere, I heard where you said we are lucky about living in the time of great change, total upheaval. And that's the interesting times that we are living in now. And, for me, it really gives me a different lens to look at about these times, and I thank you for that, because tell me about your outlook about how we are living at a time of great change today.
It's like that Chinese blessing curse. May you live in interesting times. We are living in interesting times, and that's when things are changing. We saw that when we were growing up in the 60s, that there was a lot of unrest. The community was speaking up and working for change. And we're seeing it again, now in this time in which we're living again. It's kind of like the young people remind me of where we were back in the 60s. And you can see that kind of consciousness of community working like they do in Flint, Michigan, complaining about, the water that they've had to drink, or people complaining about housing, or people complaining about the deaths in their community, and not wanting to take it anymore. So we're seeing community organizing and resisting and speaking up as a collective. And encouraged by young people and what we have seen recently with young people and about global warming and young teenagers being the spokesperson, organizing demonstrations that we've seen happening in the last few years in the United States. So this is a interesting time. That's a gentle way of putting it, but it's a volatile time because I think people are realizing that they can work to make things change. And that idealism is very encouraging, especially since we've seen a lot of complacency since the 60s and 70s, that people have been very complacent. So it's nice to see the young people getting all riled up and organizing and doing things. I'm very proud and bonding a lot with my nieces and nephews who are at that age and who I feel are being conscientious about being proactive.
Yes, yes. I've got a question here from Roxanne Chintaka, the teacher from Arthur Hill. She works with a lot of high school students. She says students who are beginning to find what they stand for and what they believe in, students who are finding their cultural identity, what message would you give to these aspiring writers?
Well, I think it's very important for anyone, whether you're a writer or whatever your career is, to earn your own money. That is very important because a lot of times your family, out of fear, may not want you to go the route that you want to go in. So, in order for you to control your destino, I always say, earn your own money. That way, no one can tell you what to do, and then make yourself as marketable as possible. Have a very wide parachute so you can get a job. Get up and move if there's no job in your town. There's no job in your country. Go to another country. The globe is large, but you have to make yourself a very wide parachute. So, one, earn your own money. If that means studying and making yourself marketable, traveling, do it. And the second thing I think it's important for young men as well as women is to control your fertility, because a lot of times when we're very young, we're detoured from our destiny because we can't control our fertility, and we become parents when we're still children. So that's important. We need to respect those choices that we make about family and plan for our families appropriately, not when we're still trying to reach our own dreams. So, whatever way you believe in controlling your fertility, whatever way is compatible with your spirituality, control your fertility. Your fertility doesn't control you. And the third thing I tell young people is to do not grieve when you don't have a date, or you're not popular, or you're not going anywhere on Saturday, or you haven't gone anywhere because of the pandemic. The time when you are by yourself is time the universe is giving you to invest in yourself. And, that's a gift. I know when I had a boyfriend that I was always taking care of him and not my needs. So please take advantage if you're by yourself, that this is time for you to nurture you. And so again, one, earn your own money, control your fertility. And the third one I call solitude is sacred. When we're alone is when we can listen to the things in our heart. It's the time when we create and we make art. So those three things are essential for becoming an artist.
Wow, nicely said. Nicely said. We have another teacher with us tonight, Jamie Manacaro, and he is asking the question about Woman Hollering Creek. And he says that many of his students stole a number of the paperbacks of the book in a good way. They loved it so much. And he says, what was the inspiration or theme?
And what is the question? I'm sorry, because I was laughing.
He says, what was the inspiration and theme or themes of the short story?
Yeah, well, I had already written Woman Hollering. No, I hadn't written Woman Hollering Creek. I meant I had already written House on Mango Street when I sold the rights to a book I hadn't even finished. So Woman Hollering Creek was just a few stories. Mm-hmm. And my New York publisher, bought the rights to House on Mango Street from me. It was a small press book, and then it moved to a larger press in New York, and they wanted my next book. That often happens, that when a large publishing house buys your book, they have in the contract the option to buy your next book. So they had that option. They gave me an advance. And boy, the pressure was on, because when I wrote House, I was just writing it and nobody cared. But now, I had a big publishing house waiting for this book. And of course, as soon as you think about who's waiting for it or who's going to read it, that blocks you. So I was blocked when I was writing it. And I knew that I would be looked at as one of the first Chicano writers, that's what everybody would be looking for. So I wanted to tell everybody's story. I felt like Noah and the Ark, that I was looking for every story of every Latino in the United States, which of course is crazy, but that's what I felt. And so I was looking to tell as many different kinds of stories as possible. And of course, that made it impossible for me to finish, but I had great revelations when I was writing it, experiences that woke me up to stories I didn't know I was going to be telling. And it made me have my antenna out there. Like anything anyone told me, I said, I haven't written about that. Oh, I haven't written that. So I was always collecting and collecting. And I just wanted to have a very large arc with a full menagerie of stories. That's what I was attempting to do. And because I was going to be looked at as a writer writing about my community, I wanted to honor the community. That was in my head.
Wow, just the way your use of words and how you explain, what your thoughts are is just so inspiring, even
But
tonight.
Larry, I have to tell you, I felt like crying. I thought I wasn't going to be able to finish that book. I thought I'd have to give the money back. I had a very funny story that you appreciate. I went to the border at that time, as that I was writing the book, the early 90s. There were also tent cities with Central American refugees. And the official story was saying that the community didn't want them there. And I said, I don't think that can be true. I have to go investigate. So I went to the border and I recorded one man's story over one night. And I realized later that wasn't enough to get his voice and to get his story, that I would need to spend a year or years there. But when I was there, I wound up driving through Falfurrias, Texas, which is a little town that has a shrine to Don Pedrito Jaramillo, who's a folk saint from that region. And when I went to the shrine, it was just like a little garage. It wasn't even an altar. It was like a little cinder block garage. And people had left their names and notes and their crutches and their photographs and their letters. And I was so humbled, because I thought I was writing everybody's story, but everybody was writing their own story to Don Pedrito right there. And they were more beautiful than anything I could write. So I was so humbled and inspired that I made a manda to the Virgen de Guadalupe, which I'd never done. And I said, if these stories are going as they should be going by December 12th, I'm going to go to Mexico City and visit your shrine in Tepeyac. But I want to write everyone's story. So please help me to do this. And when I made that promesa, I just felt like a rock got lifted off my chest. All the stories started coming.
Wow.
And even though I hadn't finished the manuscript on December 12th, I was in Mexico City and Tepeyac to give thanks to the Virgen de Guadalupe. And the book did well, thanks to La Luz, because the Virgen de Guadalupe is a door to the light. And I'm Guadalupana ever since.
Wow, what a beautiful story. Thank you for that. Thank you for that so much. We've got Ruth O'Leary Pittman. She's on the live stream. She says, I enjoyed your book. I found it to be a sweet story of childhood, visual, colorful, bright. And we also have Dev Wazlewski for Sandra. She says, who is someone, he says, who is someone you have met in the past year who has really impressed you, and why?
Wow, that's a good question, Dad. No one's ever asked me that before. I always like when I get a question that no one has ever asked me before. Wow. I'm going to say it's like not anyone famous. It's just like the everyday people in Mexico that are not getting a financial bailout. There's no bailout for the people that are selling things in the street or knocking on the doors or offering to sweep your driveway or selling cookies or empanadas to help buy a computer for the younger sister that needs it now that we're under lockdown, and who's having to attend class through Zoom. It's really the pueblo mexicano that I have to say, and the immigrants that I meet coming through. They make me admire and really define for me courage. Because this is a time of increased xenophobia and fear that we're living in, and when we allow ourselves to be guided by fear or anger or anything negative emotion, it really blocks our best self. And I think when I see people that are very humble and they have nothing and are brave and are doing things that I know I couldn't do, uh, it inspires me and encourages me to do what is difficult for me, like writing a novel is difficult for me because I don't know how many years I'm going to be locked up doing it. But when I see people like, crossing countries, like some of the Haitian immigrants I've seen in Mexico, they've come in through Brazil and come up, and, they have so much need. Regardless of where they're coming from, people are coming with so much heart. And it's just a difficult time for them. I feel like I have it really good. I'm a double citizen. I'm very lucky. And I earn from my writing. I have a job. I don't have to go to work. I am at work at home. I feel very blessed and privileged at this age to be earning well. And so many people are out of work globally because of the pandemic. So many people have lost loved ones. So many people are in pain. So many people are living in fear. So many people are hungry, whether they're immigrants or not. This is a hard time for everyone. And me quiebra el corazón, it really breaks my heart. I feel very guilty because of all I have. And it makes me feel like I admire the ones that are aguantando, enduring during this time, whether it's from pain of loss or because they're hungry or because they have no country or they have no job. It makes me feel like, wow, you think you got problems? Take a look at the news. And so I'm not going to name one person. I'm just going to say everybody who is in this place of the broken heart. That is something we strive to be at as an artist, to break our hearts open and write from that place. But people are living with that, and they're not writers. They don't know what to do with that pain. They don't know, and yet they endure. So that's who I admire. And, I only have to read the newspaper every day to see all of the citizens globally that are enduring.
Well, thank you so much. Just the way you explained that. We've got people on here that they're saying thank you for the wise words for our young people. That's from Catherine Martinez. And we also have Herbert Hurd, who says simply, "You are loved."
Oh,
You are-
thank you. Herbert, you are going to go far.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the end of the program already. I can't believe it's already the end of the show, and there's so many other things that I would love to hear. You
Well, I
have
just want to add something for the little girl out there who is the one afraid to raise her hand in class, the one who doesn't look up when the picture gets taken, who blinks, or who's hiding behind her shoulders and never talks in class. That was me. So I want that little girl to know that, maybe it's hard being a child and not being popular, not being the smart one, not thinking you're not smart, thinking you're not pretty. And there's something destiny has in store for you, for all of you who are shy and quiet. Sometimes it's our place to be witnesses, to train us to feel deeply, because perhaps our destiny has a profession like being an artist in store for us. And I want you all to know, I can't believe I'm talking because I spent all those years so quiet. So thank you, and don't lose your dreams. It's important to dream.
Bravo, Sandra Cisneros. Thank you again so much. It really has been a joy tonight, and I wish you continued success in bringing your voice and narrative to the world. And
Thank
to my
you,
listeners, thank you so much. It was an honor. And to my listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to the Marshall M. Fredericks Sculpture Museum for the opportunity for this interview, and to WSGW for making it possible. Stay safe, everyone. Until next time, I'm your host, Larry Rodarte. I feel so cultured tonight. Don't you, Chandler? Stay safe. Hasta luego. Arrivederci. Ciao.
Thank you, Larry.
Hey, okay,
Gracias.
okay. What a great
Larry.
show. Sandra is still with us
Yeah, I
in the
just wanted
live
to thank
stream.
you.
Thank you so much. Is there any last thing, advice, or anything that you want to give to our live stream audience that is here
Yes, if
tonight?
they didn't get to ask a question, they can write me a question on my website. I have a place for letters. I answer all my mail. It might take me 4 weeks, but I get to my mail every month. So if they'd like to ask a question.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you again so much. Chandler, did you want to say anything?
Sandra, you got a new fan over here.
Oh, thank you. How
That
sweet.
was absolutely inspiring.
Oh, I
Yes.
hope so. And Larry, I want you not to give up on your book because everybody goes through that. Make sure that before you publish it, though, that you have several editors, that you have personal editors, writers. Look at it because a book is only as good as its editor. And I
Yes.
share my work with at least 4 or 5 writers before it's published. Okay.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for that advice. I have run into those roadblocks. I even went down to Huandacarrillo, Michoacan, where she was from, near Morelia.
Good,
And just
good.
to hear the chimes of the cathedral, the bells, and to be inspired. And I was, and then I came back and I said, man, it seems like I have to be, there to be immersed in it. But when I hear the words from you tonight, it inspires me. So thank you so much.
Adelante. And just know, despair is part of the process, is not the destination. Keep going. Read writers who give you permission to write, and just make sure that you have other writers editing you because like I say, writing is like cutting your own hair. We could only do so much in the mirror, but somebody has to help us with the back.
Yes, yes, yes. And I want to give Megan the opportunity here to say whatever you'd like, Megan, at the end of the program here to the live stream for everybody.
Oh my gosh. I just feel so lucky to have had a front row seat to this conversation. And I wanted to kind of also add that my first reading of your book was listening to it while I was gardening on my headphones.
Oh,
And what an experience. I recommend it to anyone who's read or reread your book, that it is such a lovely experience with how you tell the stories. Someone made a comment about how sweet the stories were. I definitely felt so many pangs of other feelings,
me too.
not just sweet feelings.
I thought,
Um,
are we talking about the same book?
I know, I know. But the way you paint these pictures that are so vivid, and so y- filled with feeling, like you said, there it's poetry. To me, it's straight up poetry. It's all
Yes.
poetry.
Yeah.
um but it allowed me to hear some things that I don't always want to hear but need to be said, and you wrap them up in these words and these descriptions that allow it to be heard.
Well, was very conscious that this book, even though I wrote it for very mature teenagers, that it might be overheard by children. So I was very conscious to not use any language that would be objectionable. And so
Hmm.
I wrote about very heavy subjects in a
Absolutely.
way that I thought could get past people who weren't initiated, who may not understand it. And it's okay, it'll go over their heads if they're too little. But if
Right.
you know what I'm talking about, some very heavy subjects. And I
Absolutely.
just witnessed and I was also a counselor. So young people told me stories that I didn't know what to do with. And
Yeah. And
they
I think that the foundations of the Me Too movement, and just kind of, not that it's a narrow subject, because we know that has can include so much, but that was created for young people,
yes.
and it obviously spiraled above and beyond, but things happen at those young ages.
Yes, and I just wanted to make sure that this book could be read out loud with children, and that some of the children like some of the funnier ones, and the
Hmm.
heavy ones they don't get. That's
Hmm.
fine. I
Mhm.
just like that it's got something for whether you're little or you're or elder. You could be an elder and still have something to that would strike you in the story. So I'm happy it serves. I'm happy to hear that it's being read in communities like yours. And I just want to thank you because I used to have your job writing those proposals. How much work it was, Megan.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I'm so grateful to you. So thank you for your efforts in bringing books. I think that one of the things, like we know there's wars going on, and some that are just starting this week, but what you're doing to bring books is a peaceful, a beautiful gesture, and very inspirational to me tonight. So thank you.
Right. Thank you so
Well,
much for taking the time.
Yeah.
Sandra, I just want to say, I've been a publisher of Mi Gente magazine for 27 years, and this is truly one of the highlights of my career. So
Oh,
thank you so much.
you're
Really.
gonna
Me too. Me too.
thank you so much. You're gonna make me
And,
cry.
I feel like I have a frog in my throat. It's this whole
Well, you
interview.
know what? Before this began, I always pray that Virgen de Guadalupe let us be a door for light, because we all have choices we make and every day, and what we say and what we think. So I thank you for being peacemakers, helping me to send the books to those who need them, to do really healing work, because this is such a violent time. And what you're doing is of great spiritual power. So thank you both for spreading the seeds of peace and making that choice tonight, and in the proposals and all your efforts. I'm so grateful, and I'm very lucky.
Mhm.
And we are blessed. We are blessed to have you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Gracias mil. Bye, Megan. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Have a good
Pleasure to
evening.
meet you. Yes, you too.
Likewise. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Megan. That went
Wow.
great, didn't it? Wow. I'm like, seriously, I had a frog in my throat. Like, when she started talking about the Virgen de Guadalupe and her promise to her, and I just like, so I can just relate on so many levels. So wow, that was great. How'd you think it went?
Oh, that was, she's just such a special person.
Mm-hmm.
Special. She brings light to when she brings her presence, she brings light. And the way that she shares of herself in a very real and authentic, kind and compassionate, graceful and thankful way. It's just what an inspiration for people to look up to.
Yes, yes, and it's really a great initiative what you guys got going on there, and that you were able to bring this and allow me to be a part of it, and it's just wonderful collaborative with the Marshall M. Fredericks Museum. You're doing a great job, as Sandra said, adelante, going forward. It's just wonderful what you're doing there. So thank you and Dev, and all your efforts to bring this tonight to WSGW.
Yeah, and we hope to do more with Mi Gente on Air with maybe do some stuff with our Mi Casa Su Casa storytelling. And of course we want to capture your story.
Oh
And
no.
yes, so maybe some stuff with Cinco de Mayo, and we'll be
Sure.
down there with our tent and presents. And so yeah, I think that there's lots that we can do together.
As long as we include Chandler in there too, make him
Yes.
tell his story.
Hello.
Because
Wait,
he
what?
Yes.
he always tells me he always feels so cultured, when he comes off
Yeah,
of the
I'm
show.
supposed to be the one learning stuff. You guys don't need to learn anything.
No, everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as we learned from Sandra's book house on Mango Street, a story and a chapter in her books sometimes is only a page long, and it's just a little glimpse into it's a story in and of itself. That one chapter, that 1 or 2 pages is a
Mhm.
complete story about a memory, a neighbor. We all have a little glimpse into our past of our neighbors and neighborhoods growing up. And so you, Chandler, I'm sure you got a neighbor that you'd love to describe for us in a little story. So
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
All right. Well, thank you all again. Thank you, Chandler. Thank you, Megan. Thank you to all the listeners out there in the live stream here. on WSGW Live. And this program, the show, will be broadcast on Sunday at 8 p.m. on 100.5 FM and 790 AM. And it will then go into the podcast of Mi Gente On Air. And I'm sure that you'll be able to check it out all this week as well on the Marshall M. Frederick Sculpture Museum, because it was part of their live stream feed as well. So I want to thank everybody again. I am so honored to be your host on Mi Gente On Air. And like I've always told Chandler, as long as I'm having fun, I'll continue to do it. And we're going to bring you some great guests coming up. So thank you again. Buenas noches. We'll see you next time.